Hello and welcome to another episode of Radio War Nerd. The date today is December 5th, 2022. And this is episode 357. I'm the host, Mark Ames. I'm up here in Western New York, Rochester, Lake Ontario, the whole shebang. And I'm on the line with John Dolan, a.k.a. Gary Brecciario, a.k.a. the War Nerd, in Trieste. John, how you doing?
Pretty good. I just thought I'd mention one thing about Italy at the moment, because it has some relevance to the Ukraine war.
Mm-hmm.
The heat went on at the end of November. It had been officially off till then in order to save energy.
Mm.
And now it's officially on, but the hours you can use it are strictly limited, and the temperature is limited to 20 degrees, which I guess is about 68 Fahrenheit.
Mm.
And this is all officially related to the natural gas problem and the war.
Interesting. So it's central heating in the building, like everybody.
Yeah.
Kind of. Is it steam radiator like Moscow?
Radiator, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Huh. So 68, if I remember right, and one of these days we'll get to this, but John, if I was young, but I still have some burned in memories of that period. 73 or 74, when we had the energy crisis, the first one, and Nixon was in office, and everybody was supposed to set their heaters no higher than 68 and their ACs no lower than, I think it was 72 or something. I can't remember, 74. Do you remember that at all or no?
I remember that, but I think it was the AC temperature was a little higher than that, like 74, which seemed like an outrage.
Yes,
like, we will die. We will just die.
Yeah, the heat part, I guess, wasn't as big a deal, but that part, yeah. At least for us Californians. Wow, so yeah, the war kind of hits home. Has there been any grumbling?
Not that I know. I don't think so. I mean, it's not like the heat police are going to kick in your door. You know, it's in fact, there's a very Italian qualifier on the notice, like, you know, you are absolutely limited to 20 degrees with a tolerance of 1 to 2 degrees.
So, good for them. That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I've noticed too, and then we'll get to our guest here, is that Maloney, the sort of post-fascist leader, the FDL leader, who's now prime minister, her numbers have ticked up only since she took power. And I just saw a poll out of Germany, and the Green Party, which is already, their numbers already went up a lot. Like, they've been soaring. The more hawkish pro-war they are, the more they say we need nuclear power and coal and everything. Like, basically, the more they are the opposite of what they were supposed to be, the higher their poll numbers go. Like, they're passing up everybody. It's insane.
Yeah, the German Green Party is very hard to understand from a distance right now. I just remember that famous tweet by one of their leaders saying, I don't care what my constituency thinks. This is an overwhelming military necessity, and we're going to do what's right for the war effort. Not very green.
No, it's really weird. All right, so let us get to our guest, an old friend of the show, and just general friend, as Jiminy Glick might say. Yasha Levin joining us, longtime colleague. Yasha has his own Substack, just yasha.substack.com. He is the author of Surveillance Valley, which when it first came out, well, we've had him on the show about this, but when it first came out, a lot of people, particularly in the sort of intel, cyber, or whatever world, reacted like, I don't know, I mean, like squealed, basically, that you can't do this, by saying that, you know, the tech is not this free Jeffersonian utopian paradise, and the whole thing is up to its eyeballs in military intelligence and oligarchy. Anyway, now I think a lot of that's become common knowledge. He also has a podcast through his Substack called The Russians with his wife, Yevgenia. Anyway, first of all, Yasha, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me on. It's been a while.
Yeah, no, it has been a while. In fact, every time I was going to try and get you on, Yasha, you seem to be doing something else. Like the last time we were going to try and get you on, you actually were heading to Russia with your wife and your baby.
It was the smartest trip undertaken in the history of the world. It was just easy vacationing.
Yasha's National Lampoon Putin adventure. I mean, it's like Putin vacation. I don't know. Could you briefly tell us what happened with that?
Yevgenia hadn't been back to Russia in a bunch of years, and she was kind of feeling a bit nostalgic for her homeland, and at the same time, we kind of had been kind of low key trying to develop this Soviet zombie horror film that we co-wrote, and before this whole war broke out, Yevgenia was actually planning to go back to Russia and to start setting up the process of shooting this very, very low budget kind of indie horror film. And the war kind of obviously just exploded those plans completely. And so when there was a lull in the fighting, and it seemed like things were going to be normalized and kind of stay like this for a long, long time, just a kind of slow advances and retreats on the battlefront,
right.
And total normalization of the war in Russian society, and a kind of just people not even really paying attention to it anymore. We thought we'd just sort of pop in to see how things were, and to pop in
guys,
and see how things were, and take our 1-year-old daughter with us, and to see if it was it would be possible to shoot something there, even at a time of war. We probably knew the answer to it in the back of our minds, but we were kind of in denial about it. And so we went there, and we're going to spend. Obviously, getting in is very difficult. You have to. You can't fly directly from Europe there. You have to kind of go around, or you have to go by one of the land borders. So you can either get into Russia from Europe by land, by a bus, basically, or fly into Turkey or Dubai, or some Central Asian republic, or Armenia or Georgia. So it's like you have to make these big roundabout trips there. So we decided to go kind of the more direct way into Russia through Finland. Partially because we have friends who live in Finland, and we're going to stay with them for a couple of days and kind of reacclimate before we, move on to the next part of our trip and try to get into Russia. While we were obviously in Finland, we got really sick. All three of us, not with COVID, but some kind of pretty nasty. I don't know what it was. We don't know what it was, but it was pretty nasty. So it floored us right away. And so when we were coming into Russia, we were already just sort of, I don't know. Deadly sick because we were sleep deprived and kind of on the road, and so we caught this. My wife Yevgenia basically got almost pneumonia, and when we arrived in Leningrad, so we were like bedridden basically for like a week and a half when we arrived there. And as soon as we kind of started feeling better and started moving around and interacting with people, Putin ordered the mobilization.
Right, and that's when everything went to shit in Kharkiv area.
And everything went completely crazy. And so we also were going to leave roughly around that time. We were planning to leave, but we didn't have a planned. We didn't have any tickets out of the country. We thought we were just going to sort of play by ear when we got there, and we weren't sure when we were going to leave. And so we, like everyone else, was scrambling to find a way out of Russia during the mobilization order, right after the mobilization order.
Right.
And so ultimately, we decided to leave also by land through the Estonian border, and somewhere between Estonia and somewhere between like leaving the country and getting to Estonia and then going further back to Finland, we caught COVID, and so on the tail end of our trip out of Russia, we got even sick even more. So we were sick for most of the time that we were on the road there. It was pretty brutal.
Sounds like Napoleon's invasion, pretty much. Go and get sick, retreat.
We did spend quite a bit of time in Russia, and so it was interesting to be there, because we were there for the normalization of it, and then for the sort of. And then when things kind of got escalated, seriously escalated in Russian society when the general mobilization was announced by Putin. And it's a really strange place right now, I got to say. Like, very schizophrenic, right? Because on the surface, everything there is normal. Like, it's really normal. Some things are a lot more expensive. the people who have no money are fucked even more than they usually are. But it's just a matter of like degree, I guess. It's not like something,
It's not like the siege of Leningrad or
Yeah,
something.
it's just there's people are just poor,
Right.
poor people are already poor, and then people who have a bit of money, pretty much don't feel it at all. Who have
Yeah.
money don't feel it at all because they're just paying a little bit extra for things, which they don't seem to mind. I mean, the only thing that's really difficult is travel, right? So it's harder to travel to Europe. But even we spent most of our time in Leningrad because we got sick and just stuck there and decided to just stay put for a while. But even there, people, just will take the bus, would take the bus out to Finland or take a car out to Finland and then fly out from Finland to wherever they wanted to go. People who already had visas to EU visas, or people who have like residency permits, or or who have second citizenship. Because what people don't realize in the West, I think, when they do these sort of travel bans, is that the most elite people in Russian society aren't really touched by them because they have dual citizenship. They either have EU citizenship through basically investing in like Cyprus or something,
Right. Cyprus,
and,
Malta. Yeah.
Or they have Israeli citizenship,
Right.
or they have or they have American citizenship, or they have some kind of other arrangement, right, that allows them to move around pretty freely, despite these bans. And so the only people really affected by it are like middle class people, I guess, or like upper middle class people who don't have that. But even they still have open visas that are still valid for a while. And so people are even like moving around and going to Europe. It's just a bit more uncomfortable. So there's a very strange feeling there. There's a war happening, and people have different sort of opinions on the war. I don't know, but like it just seemed like, and nobody really wanted to acknowledge that. Like people were in denial about it, basically, and didn't want it to intrude on their lives.
Right.
So what was interesting about the mobilization order was that, like, Putin kind of made it like that was a sort of unwritten sort of agreement, right, or unspoken agreement, which is that we're going to wage this war, but you're going to live your life like you always had. It's not going to touch you.
Yeah.
And we're going to get these contractors. We're going to get these people from the provinces. We're going to pay them some money. They're going to be the ones, dying and fighting in the trenches there, right? And it's not going to touch the majority of the population, especially people in the big cities, especially the professional class, and especially sort of the urban class, right? And with the mobilization order, that unspoken agreement, it seemed to have been sort of torn up, right?
Yeah.
And because suddenly people who weren't really worried about the war and who maybe were against the war but weren't worried about it touching them personally on this kind of level, were like looking for ways to get the hell out of the country, or if they couldn't get out of the country because they had family, and they had kids and wives and a job, then they just couldn't leave, even if they wanted to. Were like paranoid and not going into certain portions of, let's say, the kind of the countryside around St. Petersburg towards Finland, because they knew that cars going that direction were being stopped, and some people were getting their mobilization draft orders right there, there by the side of the road.
Were they actually pulling people out of cars?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I heard a lot of crazy stories too from some people.
They were in those
Leningrad,
days after the mobilization order. Yeah, I was, because we were actually taking the train from St. Petersburg to Moscow right as Putin made the announcement, and you could tell that like the kind of the, I don't know, like the vibes in that train car, because it's all kind of professional people, people with a bit of money, because it's an expensive ticket to get from, because it's like the speed train, the kind of the bullet train, and so the vibes there got like a lot more cold, and people just stopped talking and kind of. But to your question, yeah, when we got to Moscow and I started talking to people back in St. Petersburg, that I was in touch with, they were saying, yeah, we're not even going to go like pick mushrooms in the direction of Finland, because our friends are telling us, that they know people who are, going that direction towards, in the direction of the Finnish border, and they were being pulled over and they were getting papers handed to them right there on the side of the road, that kind of stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty scary. We I won't get into any details now just to be safe, but we are hosting right now a mobilization refugee. Somebody my wife knew in Moscow who got served papers and did not want to go kill Ukrainians and die and get shot and all that stuff, and got the hell out and went through a circuitous route. The one sort of positive thing I could say is that it does seem, contra Michael McFaul and all these Atlantic Council and people, especially people from Eastern Europe and Baltics, from all the think tanks and political world, all have been pushing hard that every country should deny Russians, that they want to blockade Russians in to force them to rise, in their minds, which wouldn't happen, to rise up against Putin, or they just don't want Russians around. I don't know. It's very
pure spite, man.
It's pure spite and
my
pure
reading of
racism.
it.
Yeah, it is, because they know they're not going to rise up. No. They just don't want them even seen as people, really, because if you accept them as refugees, it means you admit that there are some quote unquote good Russians along with quote bad Russians. But this guy here, he crossed the border through Mexico, and they were pretty understanding and pretty good about it.
Yeah.
And there's other indications we have from other people we know that there's been a sort of understanding. I mean, there was a New York Times article about the problems Russians have had, but I think it's really changed in the last couple of months since the mobilization order to try to help them get out, because it's obvious. I mean, if you're serious about this, you don't want them going and killing Ukrainians and dying for that matter, and you also get smart people coming here, So. Anyway,
I think with anything on the border, I think it's also can be it's random, right? I mean, some people have decent experiences,
It can
just
be,
kind of will coast through the process, and other people will get just stuck in there and get the full border experience that America usually offers to migrants who try to cross and get asylum.
It's brutal, I know.
Which is you get stuck in this privatized prison system.
Exactly. That was that New York Times article was about, and these Russians got put in the geo prison systems in Louisiana. I mean, it's as this one guy said, it's like going from Russia to Russia. I mean, it's just gnarly. But we know a translator who said that there were like clear directives.
Interesting. Interesting. Speaking of the border, because it was interesting to go, because we left. I guess I can't remember now, because I was just so sleep deprived, and one thing that goes immediately out the window when you don't sleep is you can't really form memories. But so we left about a week, maybe just a little bit less than a week, maybe 5 days after the mobilization order, and so we were on the bus through Estonia, and we when we were
so you have to cross the Russian border first, and then
we had to cross the Russian border and then the Estonian border, exactly.
Right.
And on both of those borders, we weren't sure if we were going to be let through, actually.
Right.
Despite the fact that we have both American citizenship, all three of us have American citizenship, because on sort of the EU side, right? So some of these Baltic states were kind of being basically out of pure spite, where once in a while, or it was not clear how often it was happening, but it was happening enough to get like an official response from Israel and from, I think, America, most likely,
right,
was that they were not letting in dual citizens of Israel and Russia through the border and into the EU.
Right.
And so I remember, even before we left, I even called up the American embassy in Estonia and asked them, so if you're a dual Russian American citizen, what do you know about the situation on the border? Is Estonia letting people like that through? And the guy said that, well, they should let you through, but it's basically up to the border guard, and they can deny you, because you don't really have any rights on the border, right?
Yeah.
The only people. So anyway, so when we were passing through, we weren't sure what was going to be happening on the Russian border, because there were. We were getting some information that Russia was detaining people who have American citizenship for further questioning, and in fact, we were right, because when the bus arrived on the Russian checkpoint in Ivangorod, on sort of the
Russian side, right?
On the Russian side, yeah. What they did is the border patrol person came in and said, "All Ukrainian citizens and all American citizens, step out of the bus, please." And so we got and which is basically they were being out of spite, because Russians were being treated poorly by the EU and by kind of and by America, apparently. Russians are getting tourists are getting flagged for secondary inspection and interrogation at the borders, was what we heard. they're doing the same thing to Americans just to make life kind of uncomfortable for them. And so, our bus driver even said that, well, if you're an American, if you have American citizenship, you're probably going to miss the bus. They're probably going to keep you at the border station for a couple of hours, and so we're going to have to like go on, without you. And so you're going to have to wait for the next bus. And so ultimately that ended up not happening, in part because we have a small child with us, and so I think they felt like a little bit more, I don't know, predisposed towards us. And she's pretty charismatic. But the Ukrainians were held back, and Ukrainian citizens who, a lot of Ukrainians leave, basically had to kind of go east, right? If they wanted to flee the war zone and evacuate, they couldn't go west. They went east, and so they went through sort of eastern Ukraine and through Rostov, and and so a lot of the Ukrainians ultimately make their way up north, and kind of go to the EU through the Finnish border or the Estonian border or the Latvian border. Right. And so there were a lot of Ukrainians there on the border point, and they were being held back by the Russian border guards and just held there for hours. And each one was being called up and questioned, interrogated at the border. And so there was kind of a lot of misery at that border point.
Well, weren't they stopping? I mean, I would have thought they'd stop, as they say, men of military age with Russian citizenship, like to prevent them from getting out of the country. They weren't doing that
though. But I think there was some of that happening. Yeah. Yeah. There was some of that happening, but so there was it was basically like a lottery. You could be stopped, or you could and turn back for whatever reason, or you could be let through. And I think for the most part, they were letting people through. Yeah.
Okay. Huh. I see.
Yeah. And it's because there were a bunch of younger Russian guys, a lot of them had dual citizenship. Some of them actually lived in the West. Some of them, just had dual citizenship, but they lived, it's like an Israeli or American citizen, but they lived in Russia, and they were getting out. And so the atmosphere on that bus, when we left the station in St. Petersburg and drove towards the border, nobody was talking to each other. It was pretty grim. Right. Like people were nervous because they weren't sure. A lot of people weren't sure if they're going to be let out, right? And the bus was completely packed, obviously. And so when we cleared the Russian border and headed over the bridge to the Estonian side, everybody just started being friendly, talking. Everyone's telling them telling each other their life stories. And so it was like people were scared. It was it was a pretty grim atmosphere.
I got to say, the Russian state, when it comes alive, like I experienced this a few times, and this would be true probably of a lot of states, but I could speak here of the Russian state. Like as a rule, when I was living there, the Russian state was sort of, barely there, except once in a while to extract bribes from you. But you didn't feel like the full blanket force of the state hardly after 91. But once in a while, it would rear its ugly head. Like in 99, when the apartment bombings happened and then Putin took over, it was just a completely different vibe. And you realized, well, this state may seem to not touch you, but actually when people are activated and they know that they have to act and do shit, like it was frightening. I mean, it was kind of frightening. Yeah. And nothing like what you went through, though, because what happened when the state was activated this time, and as you said, this didn't really happen in February when they launched the war. It was sort of like the war's going to be over there and everything's going to be fine. But then the war came home, and people were mocking the mobilization, and it drove out hundreds of thousands of males. But it did overfulfill its quota also. It did mobilize hundreds of thousands of Russians, from everything I understand, including from people who are very, anti-Kremlin. Like, because when the state does activate and they know that they could get in trouble. Everybody
they
almost
overactivated. They were overeager. I mean, that was what happened.
Exactly. Yes.
They had to get dressed down. Actually, the sort of because
Putin had
the military
to calm them down. Yeah.
Recruitment. Yeah. Recruiters had to be dressed down because they didn't. The Kremlin, like, that's the last thing they needed was to spook the urban population. The support for the war is already tenuous, I think, in a lot of parts of sort of this urban class. It's not like that's the one thing that I was surprised about. Or that actually was kind of indicative of the general, support for this war. I mean, I think people begrudgingly support it or like kind of neutrally support it, but there isn't a lot of active support. I mean, I only saw one, like for instance, when the Crimea was annexed, right? And I wish it was actually in Russia not long after that. And people had their people actively sort of supported it. You could see it in the streets and like the things that they posted on their cars. They were flying that kind of the ribbon of St. George. The kind of the brown and the orange and black one. Cars actively had it, like many cars. You didn't have to look for it. It was just all around you. Clearly, people supported it, and it was genuine. It wasn't like just forced. But not in Moscow and not in St. Petersburg, I didn't really see any Z signs anywhere. I mean, I saw one truck with a Z sign in the month that I was there in St. Petersburg, and then I saw another Z sign, but these were like basically cadets because there was a military academy in St. Petersburg, or several of them, and they were kind of running around a park, and they had their little they were wearing their army. Sports uniform, right? Like sweatpants and t-shirts, and the t-shirts all had like tiny little Z signs on the back between the shoulder blades, like almost like a Nike swoosh.
Wow!
Like really.
You know where you see Z signs? Trieste. Don't ask me who spray paints them, but they're all over the walls.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder who.
No,
that
it's
is.
funny. I mean, that didn't exist there at all. There isn't any graffiti, so it's not. I mean, I can understand the Z thing and maybe in the EU in Italy because it's like an opposition almost thing. It's like, I support like the opposite thing that we stand for.
Yeah.
But there isn't like a lot of grassroots enthusiasm for the war, right? I mean, again, so I think you got to divide this stuff. It's like people support it, again, because they do kind of believe that the West is waging this war against them, and and there's like a truth to this belief, right? But there isn't like an active support of it, like it's not, people aren't like excited about it. It doesn't even seem like. It's not like everyone's flying Russian flags. It's not like a post-Iraq, a post-9/11 moment, right? It's not like, I was surprised. I was, again, you read the things that you read about in the news, and then when you actually go to a place, they can be drastically different. And I was surprised by just how little active support. And I was talking to my friends who live in St. Petersburg, and they said, yeah, like they'll like drive around town for days without seeing a Z symbol. And this is before the mobilization war. So I don't think there's that much support. I mean, active, enthusiastic support is what I mean, for the war. And so when this mobilization happened,
never really sold the war.
No,
that
makes sense.
It's strange.
It's weird. Yeah.
No, it's like and no one wants to die. Like I was asking people, they're like, "Are you willing to lose like your legs for Zaporozhye Oblast?" It's like it's like because that's not part of Russia, right? Zaporozhye Oblast is not part of Russia. Are you willing to die defending it, or like taking it back or whatever? And people just laugh at it at that statement because people in Ukraine. I was talking to a Ukrainian guy, who lives in the States now, and he's like, Ukrainians don't care about Zaporozhye Oblast. I mean, so it's like the whole thing is just a joke, of course, and it wasn't sold as like some kind of. There wasn't like a false flag attack or whatever that they staged to, They just said that an attack was imminent. I mean, the whole thing is a joke, and so there's not a lot of support. So when they really started grabbing people off the streets and grabbing people out of as they were like coming home and entering their apartment buildings, that spooked a lot of people, and it just drove everybody out of the, everybody who could go basically left. And I still have people that I know that are in Armenia still hiding out and figuring out what the hell they're going to do.
It's scary to figure out what the hell you're going to do. It's like first you go through the kind of, you have an immediate goal, which is getting out, getting somewhere. And so you don't have to think much about the whole long future ahead of that. And then when you get there, then it's like, shit, what do I do now?
No, it's
it's frightening. I mean,
and for young people, it's a little bit. If you're young and you're just starting out your life, if you're like in your early 20s or something, it's probably a lot easier to deal with it, and it is a lot easier to deal with it. But when you're already when you're established and you have a family and you have a job and you have a business and I mean, basically you're not going anywhere. It's very difficult. Only if you have like money that is can like cross borders, basically, right? Like if you're of a certain level of wealth, then you can kind of move, or you're alone. But it's very difficult to do this with families, you know. Obviously,
I mean, it
pretty
doesn't
much
help
impossible.
Putin that the war's not going well. I mean, it's
No.
going well in the mind of a few, I don't know, of a few of his sort of fans, or I don't know, people who have some delusions here. But like, it's not, it's not going well. Okay, from the point of view of the Kremlin, no matter how you look at it, and that doesn't help in terms of selling the war. Like 10 months in, it's not going well. And you could blame the West, but still,
I'm just surprised that they didn't stage some fucking, like.
I know that's one of the things. Yeah, people say like, what choice did Putin have? Well, he could have not done this, could have not done a massive invasion. Oh, he was supposed to wait for an invasion? Yes. Actually, if Ukraine was really that stupid that they were going to like stage an invasion, that's absolutely
then he'd have the whole country
do.
behind him in a second.
Exactly. Plus, you'd be prepared for it because you supposedly know for sure this is happening. Let him do it, obviously, because morale is a big thing in war, Yeah.
The way that this thing was handled, it makes me think that maybe those apartment bombings weren't pulled out by the FSB.
I know.
That's true, because they were aimed at a mass audience, and they really worked on a mass audience. This, from what you guys are saying, it sounds more like Putin and his clique are thinking purely in terms of great power elites. Like it's us versus the NATO elites, and we deploy our cannon fodder and they deploy theirs, but it doesn't work that way. You really need the soldiers, the ones who are about to get killed, to care about what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, if the apartment bombings were an inside job conspiracy, and I think there's a lot of good evidence that there is, and again, there are very respectable people who think that's a wacky, a stupid conspiracy theory, including people like Andrei Soldatov, one of the most kind of well-known anti-Kremlin dissident journalists today, thinks it's BS.
He does think that? I thought that he.
Unless he changed his mind in his book, he said it's a
interesting
conspiracy. Yeah,
interesting.
But one thing to remember is that the idea that Putin did that is a bit of a stretch. I mean, Putin had just moved to becoming prime minister, and he was powerful, but like Berezovsky had a lot of power at that time, a lot more power. The Chechens were like a real force, and they were involved. Basayev and his people they had their own internal fights and were willing to work with other people to change the situation. And the FSB was very factionalized, and the Yeltsin family really ruled the country at that time. So whoever's doing this shit now are very different people, except for Putin. For the most part, they're very different people than whoever organized, the apartment bombings. So maybe they're just lower quality people now. I don't know. Lower quality conspiracists.
They're more creative, They're more cutting edge. Yeah, the guys that are running the show now, they seem to be a little bit. They lost their touch, maybe getting older and getting a little bit more lazy.
Them. So anyway, we should move on to our other topic. I mean, it's good. I wanted to talk with you about Russia as well. I mean, also just before we started recording, usually something happens. I think the thing that happened today, which may or may not be interesting and relevant, is that it looks like Ukraine fired either a missile or a new drone or something that I think hit an airfield in Engels, Russia, in the Saratovsky Oblast, which is pretty deep inside Russia. In fact, Engels is where Limonov was imprisoned after he was found guilty of trying to start some rebellion or something, right? So Limonov spent his prison time in Engels. And so it looks like Ukraine has pulled off like a deep inside Russia proper, not Crimea, not like on the border of Belgorod or something, but deep inside Russia proper bombing. And people are kind of nervous, but there's a fatigue here on that too. It's sort of like, well, they haven't, they've been barking every time they say something big's going to happen, but what are the consequences going to be?
But hasn't Belgorod Oblast been basically bombed? It's been
on the
shelled
border.
all through the war. Yeah, basically.
But that's on the border. But this is, Engels is pretty deep inside Russia.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Right, it's right next to Saratov.
Exactly, Saratov. Right? Yes, yeah,
Saratov. It's interesting also that the U.S. said it has adapted the HIMARS
Mm.
system that it was giving to Ukraine so that it can't be fired
Yes.
deep into Russia. So they're clearly giving these things to some hotheads in the Ukrainian military, and they're nervous about that.
Yeah, I don't even know these assholes, man. But basically they're saying that ain't us. We rigged these things so they can't use it. Yeah, yesterday Ukraine came out and said, somebody from one of the ministries came out and said they just invented a new drone that can go like, I don't know, 700 kilometers, some huge distance. They could basically reach. I mean, basically they were announcing an alibi for why they were going to be hitting angles that it was something completely domestically produced.
Interesting.
Which says to me that, that maybe the Americans were a little nervous about it, but the Americans aren't punishing them for it. So I guess everyone's just kind of wait and see. Yeah.
I mean, what is it? Is Russia going to open up a second front,
Exactly,
against
no.
NATO?
I know. What are the options?
Good luck, man. Yeah.
So
well, that's for me one of the most amazing and enduring lessons or non-lessons of the war, that after the manifest failure of the Russian armed forces in this much smaller war, there hasn't been any renewed talk about a peace dividend since the Russian army has proven to be such an absolute paper tiger.
Yeah. Well, they've kind of moved that discussion to China. Yeah. Russia, that's bad, but China, oh man, that's the big one we have to worry about now. Anyways, all right. So what we wanted also really to talk about today with you, Yasha, is the latest in the whole Twitter scandal. I mean, obviously over the weekend, or just before the weekend, I guess it was on Friday, our former exile colleague, Matt Taibbi, published this thread in which he called it a leak, but it was basically worked with Elon Musk, as far as I can tell. I guess we still don't have the details of their arrangement, except that it's pretty clear the arrangement was you have to publish these leaks or whatever you call them, this dump on Twitter, which, should raise a whole bunch of other questions. And but this has been like both the talk and the outrage and everything of the media world and political world to an extent of the last few days. And since, Twitter, since you wrote the book on kind of like blowing open all this romantic BS that people had about Silicon Valley, which thankfully most people have come around to by now, we wanted to get you on the show to talk about Twitter, about what the revelations were, how explosive they were or not, and we could talk about whether what Matt did was a big story or not, or whether he did the right thing or not as well. But I don't know, where do you want to start with this?
Well, I mean, I guess I just start with it. I guess, with the conversation that we had sort of off air, a few days ago, when I guess the kind of start of this whole thing is that, like, I mean, as someone who wrote the book about basically the first book to look at how the internet fits into the American empire and the military-industrial system, and sort of just part of the American global system of hegemonic system, right? And how it's used to project American power abroad, and also, in project American power internally as well, domestically. I should be more excited about these leaks. It's like I should be, and maybe if this was like 2014, maybe 2015 at the latest, I probably would have been more excited about them. But when things were a bit more, when we were all a bit more naive about these platforms, and still maybe thought that, like, I don't know, there's some kind of, I don't know, they could be used for democracy or something, or they were at least were neutral in the way that they were run and the way that they managed information and the way that they were administered, that they weren't totally corrupted by the political system and sort of and I don't know our oligarchy. I would have been excited about it, but at this point, the stuff that's was revealed in that first thread by Matt, it's like, okay, there was some rich political people who had a direct line to people in Twitter and could complain to them about certain stories or certain not stories, but just certain tweets even, like that doesn't
Have
really surprise me,
canceled.
in 2022. Like, I mean, we watched as, for the past 6 years, probably ever since, the Trump years and the election that put Trump in power, we've seen how these platforms have been just sort of integrated into America's political system very tightly and integrated, and to the point where I mean, I remember, God, I can't even remember now the year, maybe, but 2017, maybe something like that, where really like there were these congressional investigations that were Democrats were openly threatening, like Facebook and Twitter, and telling them, essentially directing them to rein in the bad actors, basically people who are kind of against Democrats and or like spreading disinformation, or they'd roll out some antitrust legislation to kind of to rein these companies in. They were holding this sort of thread of antitrust, which was an empty thread, obviously, as it turned out. But there was just we've seen this stuff. We've seen this happen in real time over the past 6 years. How these platforms have been used to censor certain stories, certain political things, and so it's not so surprising. And the stuff that he's released so far, it's not very interesting. I mean, it's interesting for journalists or for historians. Any kind of information, any kind of restricted information like that, privileged information, when it comes to light, is interesting because you can use it in your arguments, and you can use it to understand what goes on behind the scenes, I guess, But from like from a political perspective, from like a scoop perspective, I don't really see what the big deal is, to be honest. And I haven't.
I think
really,
if there's one thing, you tell me what you think, and John, you say. But I would say the one kind of most the most sort of, I don't know, interesting confirmation is that there was no basis. But I mean, not saying nobody already knew this and whatever, but that we really were lied to by these intel chiefs about the Hunter Biden laptop story being Russian disinformation. I mean, we knew it at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, those of us who knew it anyway, it seemed pretty obvious that this was not a Russian operation. But the Democrats have been getting away with calling everything a Russian operation. So that seems to be confirmed that there was no basis. But on the other hand, as far as I could tell from what Matt found out, it wasn't like somebody from the government, at least not from here. There wasn't somebody from the government saying you must remove. It was more like, it was more like these guys were liberals because they're in San Francisco, surprise, surprise. And they, people were, that crowd was very freaked out by Trump and wanted him out. And so their natural bias kind of went to work there. But there wasn't the sort of conspiracy that I think people were looking for. The other thing kind of stood out for me is just that, like when Matt first did he did this threading really slowly, and it was pretty funny actually, because it's not how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to have it all already worked out in advance, right? In like thread.
They're like actually there's like software or services you can use to like just break up a piece of text into different tweets or something, like
right. Okay.
That's what the pro long thread people do,
right.
Like
there are people who do those threads, and they're just
they should just hang.
Spool.
Those people should just hang.
I know.
Period. Yeah.
Whenever you see
just write a fucking
spool,
article. Yes. Yeah.
I know. Like the spool. But anyway, when I saw the first one, I was like, it brought back Russia memories, because Matt, of course, and then it was like, okay, this is like when the oligarchy under Yeltsin, with the Clinton Department of Treasury, created this oligarchy in order to keep our people in power, Yeltsin and so on. It was this whole dirty deal. And part of that was the oligarchs then in 96, 97, 95, 96, 97, really 96, 97, buying up all these great media outlets that had been pretty wild and had great journalism and destroying them pretty much. And then turning them all I mean, Izvestia and Savoy, I mean, all these outlets that were really good, and turning them into weaponizing them, so that they did some journalism. And in fact, the journalism they did was really only kind of part of the marketing, so that when they planted their own compromat to go to exercise their power over society or over politics, like it would give that compromat more weight because they did other decent journalism. And they just did these, dumps. I mean, all the oligarchs had their own private intelligence forces, and people bought off in the FSB and the police. They'd spy, they'd bug rivals in politics or oligarchs, and then they'd leak it through their newspapers, or sometimes their TV outlets. And I thought that, and usually this stuff was really sensational, like about stealing, I don't know, Berezovsky, like the conversations where he talked about how he stole literally every single dollar from Aeroflot and like wired it all to, Switzerland. Or,
but it'd be funny, it's true. I mean, I guess if like Berezovsky took over some kind of company and then got the information from that company and then leaked it, to kind of to fuck over his enemies somehow, that's kind of what's going on here, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was not, it just turned out to be, it was just like you did the dirty deal with the oligarch because Musk so badly, and we could go through a time on this, but Musk so badly needed something positive about Twitter. I mean, he was like crashing it into the ground at maximum accelerated speed, and he needed something to change the conversation about Twitter, and it did, it worked. Matt changed the conversation. A big story that everyone's talking about, as mad as everyone is at Matt, was broken on Twitter. So now people are talking about Twitter differently. It was a pretty dirty deal. And yet it wasn't like there was some great revelation here. I mean, I think as somebody said, like what the right really wanted, I mean, they're kind of like, well, it shows, that the globalists and the wokeists, are suppressing the speech. But what they really wanted was like, okay, I've got the children in the pizza parlor. John Podesta's coming over. Now let's go screw him and kill him. That's what they wanted. That's what that's like the equivalent of a Russian oligarch, revelation would have been. I mean,
and Matt is a good journalist. He knows the craft, right? So, and with journalism, you kind of lead with the biggest thing you have,
yes,
right? With the biggest, most explosive thing you have. And if it's like, okay, maybe there's going to be some other stuff in these leaks because I don't even know how this is going to be structured. Apparently now Barry Weiss is on the deal about did you see about this? Barry Weiss is now in there. Working with Matt to like dig through the Twitter emails, but I don't even know what the format of this dump is. Is Elon Musk basically giving them access to the entire collection of sort of management level email? Is is he doing that? Is it unrestricted?
Yeah, some of Matt's own tweets in this, I think, 36 tweet series had almost an embarrassed sound to them. Like he's number 10. Both parties had access to these tools. That is, to influence Twitter. For instance, in 2020, requests from both the Trump White House and the Biden campaign were received and honored. However, next tweet, 11, the system wasn't balanced. It was based on contacts because Twitter was and is
system not balanced.
We need to optimize the censorship regime. Yes.
SF-based media company has more DNC types than Trump types. That's the scoop. The system wasn't balanced. It was based on contacts because Twitter was and is overwhelmingly staffed by people of one political orientation. There were more channels, more ways to complain, open to the left, parentheses, Democrats. Because, the audience that he's trying to reach now thinks that everything to the left of Heydrich is the left. But Matt has a little too much experience to really believe that. So
he throws it out there for him, though. He throws it out there for him.
It's like to normal people, he puts it in parentheses, and to his new audience, it's the left, right? Open to the left.
The Nancy Pelosi left. Yeah, it's like, No, it's a good point. Yeah, and even then, it's like he kind of buries the story. It's like, wait a minute, the Trump White House. That was actually telling Twitter to take the tweets down. That's a different level meddling, I think, than a campaign. Because then you have you have a sitting executive in the White House.
That's an actual First Amendment issue. People are like, well, they violated the First Amendment. Well, okay, technically, I hate this whole fucking argument because this is where the libertarians would always defend private companies, I guess till now, that they can do what they want because the First Amendment supposedly doesn't cover private companies. Technically, I think that's right. But in this case, Trump then is the one who is actually violating the First Amendment, if you're going to be a purist about it.
That's true, and I don't think anybody's made that argument, which is really interesting.
I've seen a few people making it, but everything in journalism sucks, today. So, like, when you look at this story, you can't separate the story from the way people talk about the story. This is something Yasha and I in our private conversations have been, like, complaining about for hours and hours of phone calls for a few years now, and how depressing journalism is. So, there are just so many bad people. Look, I have a lot of reasons to dislike Matt. I mean, he tried very hard to throw me under the bus, stab me in the back and so on. But like, the reasons that people are just violently hating this story and Matt have to do with, why are you helping? It's sort of like, why are you helping the Trumpists or the right, or why are you hurting the Democrats? You're so bad now. But I think the real violation here, the real problem is, why are you working with an oligarch?
Yeah.
And helping and basically fronting for a very important, an oligarch's really important marketing campaign to try to drum up business for his failing massive investment, which could bring him down. Nothing could be greater than an oligarch going down in flames. And people pretending that we're investing, like, no, this oligarch could really be good for free speech, or like, he really believes in it. He's already, like, anybody who called themselves Elon Musk already had their accounts deleted. He's like, I'm a free speech
but no satire.
But no satire. And then Greenwald comes out, the arbiter. Oh, no, here I am. He's right. Satire's not covered. You can be canceled for satire. That's fine. It's just,
Greenwald was upset because someone was pretending to be him as a satire. Someone did that whole blue check, paid for the blue check,
right?
And then and pretended to impersonated him, and Glenn Greenwald, complained to Elon Musk to get this guy, banned from the platform. So it's like the whole thing is a joke. It's like, I like the people. There's always a limit to the free speech that you're willing to tolerate. And as long as you're kind of in control of the free speech, it's like, I don't know, free speech from these people is sort of like the free trade people. Like it's like free trade, but the freedom is on my terms only.
Yeah. And also, because it'll work for me, I believe it will work in my favor. And when it doesn't work in my favor,
I'll shoot you.
Restrictions.
Yeah.
But let's. I don't know. There's sort of two parts of this story here that we want to go into, like Musk, but also Twitter. And one thing about Twitter, so when Musk took over Twitter, there was a lot of talk, including on the Radio Warner Facebook page, like, wow, is it really going under? And Yasha, you and I have a somewhat, we see things a little bit differently on this, I think. Maybe not. But my own feeling is, like, there's no way at this moment, at least, I'll give you that, like, that, I don't know, the ruling class, whatever the hell you want to call it, is going to let Twitter, like, die overnight, like East Germany. The wall came down and that was it with East Germany. Like, it's not. I can't imagine except if it dies capitalistically, that they're going to let it die overnight, because it is this is the subject of your book. I mean, it's a major dual use weapon. I mean, just going back to its origins, you see people like Matt and others saying, in the early days, it had such promise. It was fulfilling the Jeffersonian dream. Well, let me read you something from the early days. Here's June 2009, The Guardian headline. Now, this is during the what do they call it? The Green Revolution or something in in Iran, right? That was before the Arab Spring. So the headline here: U.S. confirms it asked Twitter to stay open to help Iran protesters. Obama administration asked Twitter website to postpone temporary shutdown. This is the very beginning of Twitter, and it spread like wildfire, right? So the Obama
I don't even think
administration.
I was even on Twitter back then, but yeah, it was like the
wasn't,
early,
yeah.
it was the
Yeah,
early Twitter, very, very early Twitter.
I only went on because the NSFW.
Because you know
part.
why they did, because they were posting all this stuff, like all these basically like, I mean, who the hell? If I wasn't using Twitter, then who in Iran is using Twitter? It's like all these just basically some kind of there was a big, you know, spooky kind of disinformation and influence operation running on Twitter to promote the Green Revolution. I remember that it was like a big thing, and it was supposed to all be coming from inside Iran, but Iran was, you know, had like its internet was being restricted and all this stuff. So it's like, you know, so it was kind of important to create this, you know, to create this information, a sense so that Iran was on the verge of something huge and on the verge of being overthrown. You know, all the protests were real. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I think happened was that Twitter saw an opportunity through its deep relationship with people in intelligence. They saw an opportunity to expand their reach. I mean, it is like the most dual-use weapon of all. It's a dual-use media global weapon. On the one hand, it is absolutely a commercial space and a information sharing space, and I have gotten plenty of information from it too. But on the other hand, it also can be used to subvert adversaries. You know, I'll read again the first three paragraphs. The Obama administration, while insisting it is not meddling in Iran, that's an early iteration of meddling, yesterday confirmed it asked Twitter to remain open, because it was supposed to do sort of like a system update and go offline, to help anti-government protesters. The company had planned a temporary shutdown to overhaul its service in the middle of the night, but the U.S. State Department put in a request to postpone this. Many protesters have been using Twitter to spread information about rallies and to share news. And governments couldn't really control this. And, you know, this is a company based in the U.S. It's like, it's like CNN times 1,000. Also, Twitter and Facebook and social media have a way of affecting your dopamine levels, right?
Yeah.
And making you think that, like, if you're being trolled on Twitter, you feel the same heat as if you're being bullied in a playground. Like it creates very immediate emotions. It has that effect. And so when they were sharing this, they could create the impression to each other that their revolution was going to succeed and that they had power in numbers. You know, and there was some truth to it, but ultimately, you know, it got quashed. But Twitter played a role in sparking that. And because it was so successful, I mean, I'm sure it and Facebook were used in other instances. We know it was used. They tried using it in Belarus in 2010, and it was shut down. Anti-Putin, the first big protest that broke out in 2011 was very much American social media. There was a social media platform backed by the National Endowment for Democracy that was used in conjunction with Facebook to spread around information about vote fraud in the Duma elections of 2011. And it was probably real vote fraud, you know, just like Cozy Bear leaked real, you know, election fraud in the Democratic primaries. But anyway, so for me, like, you have a weapon that powerful with global reach, it's just hard to imagine that they would just let Musk, drive it completely into the ground. It could be bankrupted. It could be taken over by a consortium.
Well, I'm kind of an outsider because I'm total amateur at social media, but people expect this as one of their social perks, and the technology is already familiar to a lot of professionals. So if Twitter died, wouldn't there be something else with a cutesy name that would pop up really soon?
It's not that easy to get going, though, is it?
It's. In theory, yes. People would migrate to something that's already available usually. You know, so maybe there's. Yeah. I think because there also there's these monopolistic, operations that they basically suck either buy out competition or just dominated by not because you need people to be on a platform and important people to be on a platform that people want to follow, right? At this point, because it's just everything is just celebrity culture. So but just to
TikTok.
Exactly. The entire political Twitter will be on TikTok now. Having to do videos. It'll be better. Than
I
just
know.
these. It'll be, but
but the Chi-Coms will control us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All the data will go to the Chinese, CCP. Yeah. But look, there's different ways to kill something, right? I mean, you can kill something financially. You can run it into the ground. You can bankrupt it, and in essence, close it down that way. But you can also kill something spiritually. So I think if a huge part of the liberal establishment, leave Twitter. I don't see that really happening. But if they do leave Twitter, and if a lot of people leave Twitter, and it remains a kind of just sort of an Elon Musk sort of cult platform, and there'll be some sort of Trumpists and anti-wokeists, just kind of using it. I mean, it'll be their little world, but
crypto. Sorry, but also what I see, a lot of crypto people. I don't quite get how the ideology lines up there, but somehow that's part of this.
It's all these kind of like Heinlein protagonist types, right? It's everybody who thinks that I'm a one-man, center of the universe protagonist. Right?
They're all grokking together, They're all just out there grokking each other and everything. It's pretty creepy actually. But it's like they're just all it's the cult of technology and the cult of the great man, who'll deliver us from all our problems and will innovate into the future and will help spread mankind all over the universe, with his rockets and his space colonies and all this stuff. So it comes in with the crypto world because it's just this. It's part of that world, part of the idea that all you need to do to fix society, to change the world, is just to develop new technology. And crypto is supposed to be. It still is to a lot of people. It holds that promise that liberates money from governments and creates. I don't know. There's also just the blockchain will somehow create a radically transparent, decentralized, crypto anarchist, commune. I don't know, but they do believe in this stuff, and it does overlap with with the Musk cult in a big way. And Musk, was remember he is part of the crypto cult. He was buying crypto, and you could buy Teslas with with Bitcoin and things like that, if I'm not mistaken. So he's part of that world. So I don't know, but you could kill Twitter by killing its audience or by killing its spirit, essentially, of its engagement. People don't want to be on there anymore.
Wouldn't that take time?
It would take time, but if it could happen, I guess. I don't think so, because I think the majority of our political class, of the journalists and the media class, are so just hopelessly addicted to Twitter. So hopelessly addicted to the rush that they get from that platform, and basically think that this kind of performative politics is politics. This kind of performance that's in the spectacle that is enacted every day on Twitter isn't actually like what a democracy looks like. It's just like calling people out and because that's what's kind of sad about this whole thing, is that as bad as the kind of the Intercept leaks were, and as badly as they were handled, they were essentially these NSA leaks. Edward Snowden delivered these leaks to Glenn Greenwald, who then promptly privatized them, right, and put them under the control of this other tech billionaire that Matt
PayPal
Taibbi,
mafia.
Yes, this another PayPal mafia billionaire who also Matt Taibbi worked for, strangely enough, and had a good relationship with, and still won't say a bad word about, despite him being essentially fired, and kind of smeared on the way out of a magazine that he was supposed to set up for sort of under the Intercept. But as badly as those were handled and they were privatized, no one really had any access to them. The people like Greenwald basically controlled access to the NSA archives, and we still don't even know what's in that archive fully because it's been essentially closed to the public. The way that this is being handled is even worse than that. It's like we're getting it's being released on Twitter,
and it's the oligarch curating them,
and it's the oligarch who's releasing
anybody
it.
who puts this just blows me away. People putting faith in an oligarch. No, I know it's like they have this personal connection with him. I know Elon, and he really believes in free speech, or he believes. And again, I remember this in Russia. There were good oligarchs and bad oligarchs.
If you like Elon, then Soros is
the bad one.
oligarch.
And vice versa, right?
Very
And,
feudal. Very, very
yes,
feudal.
Very
Very
feudal.
feudal.
But you know what? Because I lost my train of thought. Sorry about that. I
Sorry.
lost my train. I went on some kind of other tangent that I didn't
I
need
do
to
that
go
all
into.
the time.
But at least as bad as those leaks were, at least they had they wanted to change something. They wanted to fix something, right? Like in society, which is that, Edward Snowden, whatever his motivations, wanted people to know that the NSA was there was this huge spying operation that they were doing. Most people didn't know
Totally
about
out
it.
of control. Yeah.
Totally out of control. They had control. They could bug any access, any Google account, any Apple account. I mean, all these big tech companies were partners to this PRISM surveillance program, and so there was there was at least. Society could, in theory, benefit from these disclosures, right? Like, in the sense that, there was something that was almost like on the verge of something happening. There was, it wasn't totally partisan. It was both the Democrats and the Republicans were, kind of concerned with this, and there was clearly a kind of society-wide concern about the runaway surveillance powers of the NSA.
A lot of official death threats from people who mattered. It would be wonderful if we could kill this Snowden guy.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And then Snowden, really had to flee to Russia, where he's stuck now for life, most likely. Right. So so it was an actual threat to power, and and even though it was defanged and and it's a kind of a convoluted story. You've written about this, when we still, worked for Pando and NSFW Corp. I've written it quite, about the story, the Snowden story, and kind of how it was defanged, the threat that it posed to power very quickly, and sort of was, channeled into this we just need to develop new security technology and new crypto technology to protect ourselves from the NSA. So it was it went into this sort of a realm where it poses no real political power, but still, at least society could in theory benefit from his disclosures, and that was sort of the idea. But I don't understand what the hell this is all for. Who benefits from this, right? Who benefits from these leaks other than just the spectacle benefiting it, right? So the political spectacle, and then everybody could get into their camps and denounce everyone, and call everybody a sellout, and or just a power hungry wokist or whatever. People in America, what material benefit are they going to get from this?
I ask myself that about a lot of journalism these days. Most journalism, and this one too. I think Matt has been trying to make this kind of false case that the internet and Twitter were were this sort of neutral free speech paradise until name your year. And then it started
until the Democrats and the liberals basically started meddling in them.
Yes.
I mean, that's the theory.
Here's the quote from his Twitter files series. This is number 4. And it's typical of, something you see in Matt. I don't want to call it naivete because it's a self-serving naivete, but it's a kind of naivete, I suppose. Twitter in its conception was a brilliant tool for enabling instant mass communication, making a true real-time global conversation possible for the first time. In an early conception, Twitter more than lived up to its mission statement, giving people the power to create and share ideas and information instantly without barriers. Yeah, there's classic golden age thinking there. You can almost hear the twitter of birds and flowers growing around the frame of the photo as he talks this way. And
there's a lawn, a house with a picket white fence, and a lawn and a father and mother kind of barbecuing on the weekend, two kids playing in the backyard, that kind of, but it's also it's like golden age thinking. It's great that you quoted that. Thanks for that, because I think it's perfect, because it also is he's kind of appealing to the classic mythology of the internet, right? That the internet itself started out as this democratic technology. But it was corrupted by big corporations, and it was corrupted by big government. This is the classic libertarian, or the classic narrative that's someone like Edward Snowden has and still thinks that that we need to bring the internet back to this classic golden age when it was free, when it was democratic, when everything was great. And obviously, one of the things that I do in my book is I show that there was never that point, really.
Right.
There was different there was different stages of the internet's evolution and growth. but at every point in the creation of the internet, from its birth in the military laboratory, right, to its owner, to the fact that its wires were owned by military contractors from the beginning, and powerful telecoms from the beginning, and that these, even before these social media came around, that the actual internet itself was owned by corporations and controlled by corporations, and who kind of ran it in alliance with the American state. So they're appealing to this thing that never actually existed. So he's doing this classic thing. Yeah, he's doing the classic thing, which is, again, and what's the point of it? Just
because it's worse now doesn't mean there was a golden age before. Right?
No, and what's the point? What is he going to return? So Twitter is is Musk going to bring it back to this golden age? I mean, that's the whole. That's what Musk wants people to think, right? I mean, so he's in this. So by appealing to this lost golden age that never really existed, he's actually falling in line with the Musk PR machine, right? In that, like. And this is what's so kind of gross about what Matt's doing. I mean, he is very consciously, I think, doing this, and very cynically doing this. I don't know, because I guess he just likes to be part of the game and part of this, part of the spectacle, and to be hated and to be loved, and to have like a cult of personality around him or something.
Well, I mean, you mentioned spite as an aspect of policy before, and I can't help but read a lot of spite in Matt's long march here. I think David Sirota said something good about, if you decide to move to the far right just because you were offended by the left, that's not a very good reason, or something because we've all had our bruises from trying to move left and running into,
and there's a lot not to like about the left. Let's be honest,
there's a lot not to like. But Matt, well, I mean, let's face it. You guys know better than I that Matt went through some trauma there, and I think he came out of it with a deep grudge.
Absolutely. Well, the trauma was suddenly he wasn't, adored, and trying to throw me under the bus and say, I was this innocent. It's the old innocent thing again. Everything, there's always an innocence here. And that's always with all the innocence, right? And I was innocent, and Mark was this bad guy who corrupted me, and that didn't work. I mean, it didn't work because it was bullshit. I mean, if Kathy Lally can call out your bullshit, like a hack as like lowly as Kathy Lally can expose you for bullshitting about that, I mean, then you got problems. And so I think he just decided after that, like, well, people on the right are so like, come over to us. We won't judge you. And it's like,
Mark, I mean, because I actually never even met Matt. I mean, I've talked to him on the phone a couple of times, and because I came to the exile after he had already left, right? And after there was the sort of the kind of the split happened, and so I didn't, I don't know him personally, but like you do, but my sense of it, just reading him and having read some of his, some of his stuff, if you look back at some of the stuff that he's written, with a kind of in hindsight, he's a conservative guy at heart. It seems like, he is like there's like a conservatism to him, and he's comfortable in that. In a sense, he's comfortable in this almost like in this kind of the glory days of America, and he wants to restore America to some glory days. He might actually believe in it. It's not like purely cynical, and he's not saying this stuff just to. I mean, it coincides. I mean, he can own the libs and the libs that canceled him, right, or tried to cancel him by being this guy. But it's actually like there's like he seems more comfortable there, like it's like less pain somehow. I don't know. It's maybe I'm wrong.
But a lot
of
liberals are kind of conservative like that too, in a weird way.
Exactly. But they kind of have to do this. They kind of have to do this almost show, right, to be progressive and to have some kind of progressive values. But they're actually could be pretty conservative and actually reactionary. And so in a way, like, he doesn't have to do that anymore. He can kind of be conservative openly.
What Yasha's saying makes a kind of sense. Like, if Matt's ideal placement would be somewhere within what we could call, I guess, the blue check world, well, before that acquired a new meaning with Twitter, that he was excluded from that, right? Because of all the outrage, it was most intense among respectable upper middle class DNC people.
It was during an NPR interview. I want to say that it started with Matt, and he actually like fed it foolishly. He's a really great, can be a really great journalist, and he's not always all that sharp, I think. And he got sort of called out. It was at Harvard. I mean, so this is like as blue checky as you get. I think it was at a Harvard discussion of his book with an NPR person in Boston, right? So this is like a Acela corridor, all caps, you know?
Yeah.
And that's where they first confronted him about the exile days. And then he ran home and composed, I think that was when it happened, or sometime around that time, he went home and like composed this 5,000 word, you know, mea culpa, and it's all Mark's fault, and I wasn't even there, and you know, I was innocent and corrupted and all this kind of crap. And you know, and then Kathy Lally called out like all the stuff he did after even he left the exile, and then he just sort of moved the other way. I think there's something to what Yasha said, but I also think I also think Matt, as I knew him, I would say he was kind of a dyed-in-the-wool liberal, more on the left side of liberals as liberals were in the 90s. You know, although when we had the exile going, we sort of like, I mean, just the experience of getting deeper into the story there, plus mocking the hell out of it, obviously, through every which way we did at the exile, including trying to be the most horrible journalists, like the most horrible people around, because all journalists were running cover for, I don't know, like a neoliberal extermination campaign, and selling themselves and also participating in all the debauchery that was going on there, but then presenting themselves as these angels. So we wanted to present ourselves as devils and get the story right. We just wanted to do everything the opposite. And I think his politics, you know what, they were kind of all over the place. There were times when Matt was more radical than I was on some things, I would say. He kind of moved more radically. But then there were other times he was constantly swinging all over the place. But one thing that I'd say Matt, people like Matt and I don't know, some other people that are kind of moving that way that I know who had been liberals and on the left all their career and have kind of moved weirdly rightward lately. They never really spent time with righties. You know, that's one of the advantages I think John and I had as being real right-wingers when we were young. It wasn't contrarian. It was, people tried to say, oh, you were just a contrarian. No, I mean, I really genuinely believed it. And anytime I got near those people, I was like, ew, get me away from them.
You had to flinch away from them. Because like you were for them in kind of a deep curdled loyalty, but at the same time, not their music, not their clothes, not their culture, not their way of talking, not anything specific to them, because those were all nauseous, really.
Yeah. So they were kind of like simultaneously milquetoast and boring in a way, but also like, I don't know, creepy or so. It wasn't my world. So I never really hung out with them because I didn't want to. And that's the part that I find really hard to understand. Like Greenwald, I understand his slide back, I would say back to the sort of reactionary right, like the kind of iconoclastic, anti-authoritarian right. It was that's where he is. That's who he is. That's why, you know, Yasha, like we always knew that about him. He used to drive us crazy. Lefties would just lionize him because so many lefties and anarchists, like they love to have some hero, whether it's Elon Musk or, well, not of the left, but let's say, you know, Chomsky or something. And then Greenwald just has to be perfect. You know, I coming from the right as a kid, I know when I smell one, it was so obvious. But Glenn, I think, knows that world and he's pretty much fine with it. and also they know how to kind of deal with each other. But I just look at somebody like Matt who's never really spent time, or other friends I know who've moved and started doing these like appearances at right-wing rallies and stuff like that. I don't get how they can stomach it, to be honest. I don't know. Like, if it's your hatred of the libs that much that you can swallow, like, I don't know, hanging out with these people. And
Yeah, I just remember all the Virginians I don't want to insult any Virginians who happen to be sane people, but there was a big Virginia contingent among the second generation neocons who were feeding off the big salaries in the American University of Iraq when I was there. And I just remember we shared offices, and one clean-cut young fellow, and there is no other term for him than young fellow, saying to another, I just don't feel right if I don't talk to grandma and grandpa every week. I thought, even if you thought that, and how could you think that? Don't say it. What is going on here?
They're just really hard to relate to, very hard to relate to. And that's a part that I don't quite get. But I just think, you know, from what I knew about Matt, I mean, I thought I knew him well. I thought it was you know, it hurt when he left the exile in a way that was just very much like it was like a big fuck you. And he now, you know, retroactively tries to claim it was because somehow he did not approve of like what I was writing, which is just pure horse shit. I think he understood. When I had left for about a year, was in Kentucky working on my book, I was, you know, I had to recover from enormous amounts of drug abuse, like enormous amounts. And by the time I came back, he didn't really want to be there anymore. And I think he just sort of understood. He had lost kind of interest in the whole Russia thing. And look, Matt, it's not like I came from poverty at all. I thought I came from, you know, relative to some people, some privilege. I mean, it was like we were middle class in an upper middle class area. So we had our own little, traumas, but they were nothing compared to, you know, some other people go through. But I didn't know what privilege really meant till I met Matt and spent some time with him and his dad and stuff. Like, that is the real aristocracy. That's the media aristocracy. I mean, everybody would kiss Matt's ass from like the media blue check world because of who his dad was. I've never met anyone like that, never seen anything like it. And back when we started the exile, Matt was he was almost kind of mostly a little bit almost embarrassed about it. But when I left and came back, it was more like, what the fuck am I doing here in this podunk Russia shithole with this, you know, exile, which has kind of already done everything it could do for us, but now it can only like cause me problems, because he knew that anytime he came back to the U.S., he was going to step into the blue check world.
Well, yeah, I think that was the key, getting back to the U.S., because you were saying a while ago that actually a lot of people read The Exile and were following The Exile.
Yeah,
but you never got that sense at the time. It was more like, these people are in Moscow, they don't matter. In a way, I think it helped us because we could say whatever we wanted. It was like we were firing pistols at a target range that opened onto the void. And
we were in a hardened bunker. You know?
Yeah, why not? Yeah. But at the same time, I just had this feeling anyway that nobody was listening and that it didn't matter. And I didn't see why, because you could transmit an article in milliseconds all over the world. But it turned out that way. Like when we got back to the U.S., even though it took some time, it was like people did listen more carefully. Yeah. And Matt, I think, knew that more deeply than I did anyway.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, it has to be remembered that Matt was, he was not a Hunter Thompson. Like he, where he is telling the truth is that at least in his public personality or his literary personality, let's say, the way that the newspaper was sort of divided up, his literary personality was not very Hunter Thompson-y. And I think it kind of annoyed him that his literary, he did do a lot of wild stuff under different pseudonyms and so on. But I think it kind of annoyed him that people liked the more wild stuff. At least, it was more popular, I would say, right? And that did definitely annoy him. So when he left, I remember he said that when he was going to start up this exile-y paper in Buffalo, that he wanted to do it like Harper's not Harper's, what did he say? The Economist, something like that, where nobody had a byline. And he was going to go completely the other way. And I think they tried doing that at first. And then he thought, no, I'm going to go the Hunter Thompson way. And he started I was getting reports back. I just didn't pay attention to it because I was kind of, it just sucks if a guy who you think is your friend just, fucks you like that. I mean, it's something, it's never a good feeling.
I just want to add something, sorry, just because I think, because he, in that first, to add to this idea that he's no Hunter S. Thompson, or he maybe resented that, and he kind of understood that. He wrote in this. I'm sorry, I'm just laughing because I just can't because I just looking at this text now, I'm just laughing again. He in this, I think, initial apology that he posted on Facebook, which is thousands and thousands of words long. He had this really, really pathetic segment, which he kind of says what you're talking about is that okay, I'm gonna read it. It's a paragraph and a half here. It's it took all those years at the exile to learn that this unvarnished, on-the-ground reporting style was where I had something to contribute. He's saying that he's actually just a regular reporter at heart, not like a wild guy, that this unvarnished on-the-ground reporting style was where I had something to contribute. While in other areas, like trying to be cool or offering commentary on sex or gender relations or being a public personality, it was clear I had nothing to offer to anyone.
This was just a few years ago.
This was just a few years ago, and this is why if you scan YouTube, you will not find video of me hanging with actors or partying at nightclubs or really doing anything at all outside the confines of my job. I have a beautiful family, 3 young children, and a brilliant and caring wife. ... I mean, this is wow. So this is the kind of stuff that he was just trying to tell people that he wasn't the wild guy, that he wasn't Hunter S. Thompson, basically.
Yeah, but he did his Hunter Thompson thing after.
I know.
That's what I'm saying. That was what was so weird to me. I mean, and I had all these people from the New York media world writing me. I mean, it was, again, like John was saying, the nice thing about Moscow is you could, I didn't really want to know how The Exile was read because I didn't want it influencing me, and I just wanted to put it out and then go back and hide and then
fire and forget.
Yes, exactly. And I would get these notices every so often, increasingly. Basically, at first it was people I knew in the New York media world, Matt's stealing your act.
Yeah.
Which was the weirdest thing. I was like, Matt? He's, writing about taking drugs and being wild and trying to be disgusting and stuff like that for the New York press. I was like, you got to be kidding me. And because that was what he claimed that he wanted to stop doing.
And that's how he got the gig
with
Rolling Stone, as I understand it, because Jan Wenner had at best a dim idea of these things. And, Matt seemed Hunter Thompson enough for him.
I mean, I think that was, if I remember Kathy Lalley's 10,000 word screed against us, which has so many problems of its own, but whatever. That was one of her main points. You became, from her point of view, or at least she tried to argue that because she's still upset over the prank we played on her. He became more openly misogynistic and Hunter Thompson and Gonzo after leaving the exile, whereas he tried to blame it all on the exile, and that wasn't really the case. But whatever.
He did, by the way, do some really brave things at the exile. I want to give Matt credit here. I remember a series he did where he worked as a bricklayer in some miserable city for a week, and He was tough. He was like physically tough, and he and his Russian seemed really fluent, and he was capable of doing stuff like that. But he didn't seem to value that especially. That was what struck me as weird. If I was tough enough to do that and fluent enough to do that, I never would have shut up about it. But that wasn't what he really wanted. It felt like.
I think he wanted to come back and take his place, but he didn't want to do it where it was sort of too easy. You know, he didn't want it to be handed to him. He wanted to make his own mark. And, you know, to his credit, I mean, he worked hard. The guy he's like a graphoman. He puts out shit tons of words all the time. It's not like anybody who is just born into that privilege automatically makes it. You do have to put stuff out, and you have to be pretty good about it. But Matt did other pieces. I mean, I remember one of my favorite pieces. He spent time at a collective farm. I want to say it was in the Krasnodar region when we went out and hung out with General Alexander Levin, and we went around. We found this collective farm that was still like operating barely, and we found out that there were cattle rustlers stealing whatever horses were left, horses especially, and also cattle, but also horses, as I recall, to make horse meat and kumis to sell it to like. I don't know, Mongols or Tuvans. I can't remember who they were selling it to. People, Central Asia, what we would call Central Asians who value, you know, horse meat and horse milk and fermented horse milk. And basically there was an inside job going on within the kolkhoz. And, you know, it was sort of like it was like the last story about privatization you could possibly tell. It was very well done. And he did a story once about getting drunk at a nuclear missile base somewhere in the Urals. And he got so drunk with those people, he passed out like on the switchboard or something, you know, like on the switchboard, like passed out. Somebody was vomiting in there. And, you know, those are some great stories.
But you know, I could understand as someone who comes from the sort of elite, you know, media background and from that world where, you know, he's like a rich guy doing, you know, stories about poor people and like, which is sort of like, you know, which is a lot of journalism is like that, and a lot of like documentary filmmaking or any kind of, I don't know, well, just that's such a big part of it, but it's maybe not that satisfying, you know, because
you're not seem to be.
You're not like, which I kind of respect actually, because it's like it takes nothing to get access to, you know, like basically a nuclear missile plant. I mean, it just shows how, you know, like for someone, you know, like in Russia, like especially in those times, that you can just get access pretty much to anything with some vodka and a smile, basically, right? And to be a foreigner, you know, is already exotic. It's like to be a foreigner in Russia. Even these days, sometimes to be basically a celebrity, you know, it's like being Tom Cruise or something, you know. You're just someone from America, and so you could act that. So I guess I could see why
you could sell him shock therapy, even. You know,
exactly, easily, and I could see why he wasn't, you know, to his credit. That's I kind of respect that, to be honest, because so many people, you know, like that's kind of that's the level at which they stay, you know, throughout their careers, which is basically just exploiting access to poor people, and their poverty and ignorance, you know, to like. And
but I don't know, going from that to working with Elon Musk, the richest oligarch
full circle
in the
almost.
world.
Yes,
It's
like
it's
its own way. Yeah. I agree.
I don't understand that. I got to say, I just don't understand it at all. And I honestly see, like, I think there's something to all the psychological things we're saying, but I honestly just think it's really material based. Not to be
exactly. I wanted to actually say something about that, because like you forget how how insulated the exile was from the world, and like no one cared about like people, you know, wouldn't even know how many people read an article online, rather than like obsess about the statistics about, you know, and who the people were who were reading the article, you know, where they were coming from, so you could like tailor your content, you know, tailor your writing to capture even more, right, and make more money from them. I mean, and so I think, you know, I used to kind of scoff a little bit about all this talk about, you know, being radicalized by algorithm or being radicalized by YouTube. But I think there's something to be said about Matt, and not just Matt. I think he actually fits into kind of there's a general trend with this subscriber-driven, the subscription, you know, direct subscriber-driven or listener-driven or reader-driven business model for journalism that's really just taken over, right? Where you're radicalized by the algorithm, right? You're radicalized by the audience market, right, and what they want to hear. And so when he started kind of moving more, to the right, I guess, or anti-liberal, he became kind of anti-liberal, or his. There's a huge market there. There's a huge audience there and a huge number of people who are willing to pay real money. These are people with money and a lot of spite and a lot of hatred. So when you have like a kind of a former liberal like Matt who starts moving in that direction, it only gets it begins to snowball, I think. And I just say this as someone who, I write on Substack, so I kind of know how easy it is to be captured by that, to be captured by
feel like you need to go there, or you need to censor yourself. Like the vax thing, for example, unless you're already if you're with a mainstream press and you have a cushy job, then it makes a lot of sense to talk about whatever you really believe. You're for the vax, right? And you're for mandates or whatever the fuck. But if you don't have that job and you rely on audiences, you will see that you'll either gain audience if you're anti-vax, or you'll lose audience if you say, I really think, people should mask up and it's a good thing. You won't have money,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And actually, if you're like anti-liberal, if you're critical of liberals, but yet you're like, pro-mask, you're not going to gain an audience, basically.
Yes. You'll be nowhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You'll be nowhere. And I got to be honest, that's sort of the situation where I find myself in this world, basically nowhere.
You guys have probably heard that, you probably saw this happen, that Matt topped 1 million followers on Twitter. He jumped 300,000 followers, I think in 24 hours.
Wow.
When he made what was essentially a profession of faith to the right, because that's how an awful lot of people interpreted it. Like, that he went to Elon Musk, who's the pope of this particular schism of the right, and he said the prayers, made the vow, knelt down, and boom, he was over 1 million followers, and they
kissed the ring,
celebrated it as such, as the rewards of declaring fealty. And one thing I'll say about the right is they once you join, you're in. You can do what you want.
They take care of you. It's not like the left. The left looks for 1,000 different reasons why you have something wrong, or why you shouldn't be part of the club, or basically why you shouldn't be paid. Because there's the left is pretty damn awful in that way, and they're not. They don't stand up for you for the most part. There's in some areas that's gotten a little better in the last few years than it used to be.
There's no money though. There's no money there.
I know.
That's the thing. There's no money there at all, and so you kind of like and if you. I mean, I just noticed it's like the reactionary parts of the audience, because anyone who like a lot of the people who subscribe to Substacks or who are active on Twitter or following this stuff. I mean, they're already news junkies, and they're kind of it's already a kind of a pretty limited part of the population. To be so like into this stuff, right? Like to be so fanatical about it, And so those people are. I don't know. There's a lot more, people I think on the reactionary side, on sort of than I don't know on the left side.
Well, and talent is thin over there. Let's face it.
Exactly,
they don't have a lot. I mean, there's a kind of embarrassment. It's like when I was young, many eons ago, there was a move that people would make from sort of rock to country when things ran out on them. And they would be given a second life, as pop stars, because it was easier at that time. It was a more accepting and forgiving audience. And there's a similar move you can make now, like when you go to the right.
No, and you get and you see it. So there's all these different things. Yeah, I totally agree. And there's, I guess it's also with comedians. That happens too, right? Like the comedians who kind of, just basically become right-wing pundits or go to the right. Like,
Dennis Miller.
Miller.
As his career went down the fucking toilet.
And Bill Maher in a way too, I guess you could say. Yeah, just to maybe a lesser degree. And I mean, so there's like the same thing with kind of YouTube YouTube celebrities and kind of like anti-liberal influencers, right? Like that. It's only a small step that you have to take to kind of join the right. You don't really need to. You just have to kind of be quiet about certain things and throw them. Like what Matt did with that. The left in parentheses, the Democratic Party.
Well, helping Musk.
yeah.
I mean, the way it is today in the camps, like you really stand up for your oligarchs or your leaders.
Yes.
I mean, everybody's got this sort of authoritarian thing.
Yeah.
But ultimately, this was a giant marketing event more than anything. It was a very important, big, lucrative marketing event where an enormous amount of social capital was acquired by both parties. What is Twitter really about from the investor's point of view? I mean, it's a business. It's a business like Facebook, like Google search. I mean, Google search is a great search. It allowed us to get all this information. But what was Google? Google's an advertising. It's like an advertising and marketing.
It's advertising platform. Period.
Exactly.
It delivers. It delivers.
That has a dual use.
But it delivers targeted advertising to the thing that you want at the moment you want it. I mean, that's sort of the pitch.
And Twitter
right?
does that, and Facebook does. Like it, and that is how the radicalization happens, because all of this is so much about. In the marketing world, about creating demographics and bunching them together in order to link them up then with certain advertisers that need that particular niche. And so, it forces us to be less complex in our beliefs because of the way that the fucking algorithms work, and pushes us more and more into camps that are more packageable and sellable to companies that want to advertise. And so we become more polarized, but really we've just become more demographicized. Yeah. And what Musk did, Musk was saying, there are real things also that are going on top of this. It's such a powerful platform, along with a few others, that like when people get canceled from it, and because Twitter's more liberal, it was more right-wingers and Nazis and so on, who are being deplatformed, they can lose their business. And so they were complaining. And they wanted, hero Musk to come in and save their free speech rights. And you're seeing ever since Musk started taking control, I follow a lot of different accounts. I try and follow, right, left, and whatever for various reasons on different stories. All the righties, all they do is go right to Musk and try and hey, cancel this person, cancel. Like before Musk took over, it was all complaining about free speech and cancel culture and how horrible liberals are for canceling. And now all they want to do is cancel everybody they've been having flame wars with or whatever. I know, and there was even like
there's like a master list being circulated of all like the Antifa.
Everybody they want canceled.
Antifa, like the Antifa Council, the Greater Antifa Council. It needs to be. It's
Elders of
being
Antifa.
Circulated exactly. No, it's totally no. It's just it's about again. It's like we want free speech on our terms. And we have, we want our enemies canceled. So there's no real difference to it, And,
right. And ultimately, Musk, so Musk isn't. We're learning he's also kind of a dumb shit, and it's weird to think for some people, I guess. Anyway, I mean, we've been trying to say in the show over and over, having seen billionaires pop up more quickly in Russia, and then just following this stuff. Like billionaires are just weirdos. Some of them can be smart, some of them can be shrewd. But they're all weirdos and sick and sociopathic. And a lot of them aren't even really that smart when it comes down to it. Musk, the richest oligarch, it exposes the meritocracy.
Also, the richest, this whole that is, if he's the richest, is based on this sort of inflated stock price of Tesla and all this bullshit. It's like,
which is,
it's like this wealth is just he can't really. I mean, he can. I guess he can take. He can. Clearly,
he can take it down by hitching it all to his Twitter. investment.
And Twitter, exactly. I mean, unless Musk basically wants to completely fund Twitter's expenses going forward and decouple it from the advertising business. That it's as it stood, like Twitter was barely breaking even, and it's not flush with cash. It was never flush with cash like Facebook or like Google were. So it was always like the odd kind of platform that was you could monetize it, but only up to a point. And it was always struggling just because it is a weird platform, it's hard to target people. People don't really click. I don't even know why people click on ads there. It's kind of surprising.
I know, huh?
But like but brands, clearly want their stuff out there, and you get a lot of, I don't know, I personally get a lot of like entertainment stuff, like a lot of movie ads and things like that. I don't know if that's me in particular or if that's, but anyway, it was always like not the most lucrative platform to begin with. Even then, you have these companies and like your advertisers, do wield power over your business because they're the ones funding it essentially, right? I mean, they're the one providing the revenue, and so if they don't want their like Disney Plus to the latest Star Wars to have like Kanye's swastika right next to it, right? Like it's going to be a problem for your image, and so and so there is a limit to what Musk can do in terms of speech, right? In terms of like hateful speech and things like that, unless he wants to just come out and fund this thing out of his own pocket, which he's not going to do, right?
No.
And so there's always going to be a limit to it.
He's not going to let this drag down his whole empire. And so, I mean, he's already backtracked in so many ways.
He's backtracked
about
a lot of things.
Yeah.
And so
this is only like in a
yeah.
month. Like, at least it took Dorsey years to keep cutting back more and more and more. I mean, remember, like all kinds of countries around the world request and get Twitter to take down, talk about the First Amendment in the state, to take down tweets. And they've been doing this for years and years and years. We don't talk about it much. But again, my point is basically this is a marketing platform. What Silicon Valley wants when you come to them with any media proposal, and this is media, and I mean whether it's media or social media, whatever, is eyeballs. How many eyeballs is your business proposal going to bring? And Twitter has not been as successful as Facebook in converting those eyeballs into revenues, as you said, but it's still something, and it definitely has power. Like it has really unusual power because it has an unusual ability to emotionally mobilize people to like tap into, on a mass instant level, people's dopamine squirts and get them to do shit. Like that's why, USAID funded a Twitter knockoff called Zunzunio. They were busted in 2014 over this, basically the CIA, to create a Twitter in order to destabilize Cuba. And it was all in the business plan. It was all there. This is going to get all these kids excited. First, we're going to do all kinds of celebrity stuff through it, music. Then it's going to be like you wait for the hooks. The police will always wind up beating somebody up too much. Somebody will get killed. Something will happen, and then you organize anti-regime rallies, and this will work because it's already been proven to work. And
like Arab Spring, was like seen as a kind of a social media uprising, and you can really do. I mean, these things are what they're great at is, like over some kind of very simple issue, getting mobilizing people and getting people outraged, right? And maybe even delivering a crowd to appear somewhere. Like that's the in the best case scenario, you can do that. I mean, these things are really effective at that.
Yeah, it's good for sparking the first stage of insurgencies. What's kind of sad about it is that in the aftermath of the first Gulf War, there's that famous event which was quite real, where U.S. planes flew over Iraqi Kurdistan and the Shia regions of the south, tossing out millions of leaflets saying, rise up. And they knew at the time that when these people rose up, they would eventually be exterminated. And I think, like as in Iran with the Green Revolution, there was no plan that these flash mob type riots would really work to change the regime. Essentially, you're sacrificing a lot of people. But that's not really an issue when these things are decided.
What happened, I think, with Matt's thing was, again, it was a marketing, global marketing platform, dual use weapon, whose business was being destroyed like right before our eyes by this idiot Musk. And he needed a campaign event to turn that around, to change the conversation,
to rescue his dumb shit investment into this platform. I mean, it's like if it was Trump, it's like his failing media company. It's like that's what he's doing. He's like helping a loser, basically, trying to like rescue his investment. I mean, and then on the other side, again, like I question the the usefulness of these leaks, because then you have to like trust the source, right? You have to trust that Elon Musk is giving them access, unfettered access, and then that this unfettered access, filtered through I don't know, like Barry Weiss and Matt Taibbi, is like you're actually getting an accurate picture of what's actually being discussed there and what's being hidden. I mean, they're already like saying Jack Dorsey is innocent and all this stuff, like, and then he didn't know what was going on, like, which sounds pretty dubious to me. That the CEO of a company is not involved in a decision of this magnitude to censor a story about Hunter Biden. Anyway, there's just. Like again, like Matt is like is writing on his journalistic credentials, right? That he is this pioneering journalist. He's doing like a very corrupt thing. He's selling out to Elon Musk, and he's, as far as the public is concerned, it's getting like these little bits and pieces of what's actually there, and there's no way to to check it, right? You're not even getting like full access to the documents. So again, it's even a more degraded version of what was happening with the Intercept. I mean,
at least
like
the
a
Intercept,
much more
there wasn't
version.
a Midyar, overseeing
handing them
what was
documents.
leaked.
Yes. To me, it's one of the most damning things. I mean, it's like he's making a deal with a billionaire. And it's a corrupt deal, and he's positioning it as some kind of noble leak, that these documents are being leaked for the public to expose this corruption inside and collusion between a private tech company and the Biden administration or the Biden campaign and the Democratic Party and all this stuff. But in reality, it's like you have to trust him, and you have to trust Elon Musk, and you have to trust other people in that whole chain. And then, frankly, I mean, I don't know, like and no one can really verify it. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like, if he was actually, I don't know, if he had some integrity, I don't know, I don't want to use that word because I just think it's a joke at this point. If he had some integrity, he'd say like, no, Musk, like, I'll do the deal with you, but here are my conditions. You got to deliver to me the whole archive. I got to make sure, that it's a full archive and it's not like just cherry picked by you, because I don't want to just, report your version of events. And and if you don't agree to that, well, no deal, and I'm gonna leak this conversation to the public, for the public's sake, to show that you're trying to like manipulate journalism, you're trying to manipulate the media into presenting a one-sided narrative according to Elon Musk, right? I mean, that's what a real journalist.
The exile version of this would be all about his talks with Elon Musk and how ridiculous this guy is,
and how this guy's trying to use him, and how he's
trying to use
him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But this version is like, this is, the big leagues. These are two big businesses like helping each other, basically.
Exactly. It's synergy, man. It's synergy. Yeah. And I really do think that, like, I don't know, just I've been following Matt, on and off, and like in the last few years, and it's just, I do really think that he is really excited. He's happy to be with the big boys.
Totally.
He's
I always
like,
saw that in him. Yes.
When Elon Musk like is in his replies and like saying, "Oh yes, Matt, agree, Matt." Like, it's like, you have the richest man in the world, right? This just basically telling you that you're smart, and I read you, and I get my information from you, and I agree. It's like, that's got to be the biggest dope. It feels like that's the biggest rush that he can get at this point, and he loves it. He loves being at the table with them, and he loves being kind of appear to them, to appear to people like Elon Musk.
That's one thing I always saw, and always shocked. It shocked me at first, because Matt just seemed like a regular guy, kind of, and funny guy. Like, he was fun. He was a fun guy.
It was a lot of fun. But are you thinking of the Duma appearance?
There's the Duma appearance, but there's also just like, anytime we met these A-list reporters, and then he'd hang out and play tennis with like A-list bankers and stuff. And I didn't hold, a reporter should do that. It's just that for me, it was like, not coming from the aristocracy of the media world, or any kind of aristocracy of anything, it weirded me out. I felt uncomfortable around those people. I just felt uncomfortable, and I just, compensated by just getting like incredibly high every time I'd be around them, and kind of half being there mentally. Matt was very comfortable with them, and liked them a lot, liked hanging out with them. And, that's something that you just, I don't know, that's something that you're raised with. I remember about a year after we started The Exile, he's like, yeah, my dad is setting up a meeting with Graydon Carter, who was, I think he was still the editor of Spy magazine, about Spy doing something with us. And I was just like, that was just I had no idea that there were people in the world who could have their dad call up Graydon Carter and set up a meeting to talk about I didn't know such thing existed. And so, I think he's comfortable around that world, and I think he likes being in that world and exerting some influence, or believing in his mind that he exerts some influence, positive influence, and also like that they have some of the same tastes and some of the same pet peeves. And there's a real class culture in this country that is still barely kind of understood, and it's to me, that's what that's about.
Yeah, I mean, if I can like end on a like a
happy
political
note?
thing here.
Okay.
What's that?
A happy note? No. Okay.
No. I mean, I guess it's a happy note. I mean, I do think that I just think that platforms like Twitter, they're good for the media class. I mean, in a sense, I guess they're good for us, people like us who make money off of this stuff, but they are like a net negative for the world. And I mean, the sooner these things fucking die and disappear, the better it is for everyone. Because I look at Twitter, you dip into it and you see that like, the people who are kind of interested in politics, want to like be involved in some way, like want to have some sort of involvement in the process, or at least feel like they're involved, all their energies are being sucked into this spectacle. It's a never-ending spectacle.
Into
like
a marketing platform.
What's that?
Into a marketing platform.
Into a marketing platform, but also like a kind of, it's almost
and a
like
dopamine roller coaster. Yeah,
it's almost a counterinsurgency tool on a much more bigger political level, right? Because it just sucks out people's energy. The ones who have any actually interested. I mean, there's so few people are actually interested in politics, right? And a lot of these people are concentrated on platforms like this because there's nothing else. There's nothing in their town. There's nothing locally to be involved with. Not really,
Yeah.
And so they're sucked into these platforms that just take them on this roller coaster ride, on this dopamine roller coaster ride, and then have convinced them that this is the real politics, right? This is where this stuff happens, and this is the reality. And people like.
We will end imperialism here if we expose this one. I know,
and it's just as long as and so it's kind of it's pretty sad to watch. I mean, it's a pretty grim place because it is at the end. It's like, I mean, I don't know what John, you have anything to say to this, because I do think it's like a political neutering platform. Like where you just take people who might have be active politically on some level, and you just sap them of their energy and you'd redirect them to this totally
I think of it in more of a literary metaphor, but it's roughly the same. Like at first, I tried being on Twitter, and it was very exciting because, as I've said before, it was probably the only place I've seen in my life where training in free verse actually paid off. I mean, you could do free verse on Twitter, and it was powerful. But it started to make me sick after a while. And I started to feel like I didn't get to be part of the high school cafeteria cliques when I was in high school. And I'm damned if I'm going to do it now and waste whatever literary energy I have on making mean cafeteria one-liners that kind of make me feel bad when I'm lying in bed at the end of the day. So I just kind of got off.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a smart thing to do.
It is a smart thing to do. I'm just there because for promotion, for marketing. I use it. I try to use it to market, our shows. And some of that just means blowing off some steam, saying stuff that's on your mind at the time. But in the early time when I first started using it, it was actually a lot more emotionally thrilling and sickening, and I would get off it for a while, and people would, you'd get smeared on it, and then you were supposed to join up with other people and smear somebody else, and all that was just fucking gross. But I'm so kind of emotionally and otherwise disconnected from it. I don't know. I guess I just have a generally bleak view that it's sort of like so many other horrible things in this world. it's just part of our world, and
Yep.
you use it to try to extract what little benefit for yourself, and try to minimize the damage. And once in a while you actually meet somebody decent through it. I've met some decent people through it, decent people in media and labor. I met somebody who's Ukrainian, who's been like, we've had different friends who needed help, including like this, escapees from the war. Like, there's been a few of those things. They don't make up for the general horror of the site, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, there's always positives to it, and you do need, and it's, I have actually met some people who are now my friends through there, so there is, because you get to see people's, I don't know, interests, and and the same thing could be said about Facebook and all these different social. So there's like kind of the original, the most benign and kind of positive part of them is that they are kind of social networks, and you can connect with people who share similar interests, and people you'd never meet in real life, and would probably be impossible to meet in real life just because of how atomized everyone is at this point. So they've taken the place of that. So I totally agree. But on like a bigger societal level, it's like this in the particular, Twitter in particular, because it's just such a politicized, like just a manic kind of, almost like a bipolar kind of platform, just how much energy it sucks out of the political process, and just how tightly how tightly
overall
integrated it is with sort of the political news cycle, right? Just because it is a journalistic platform, and things are there. So yeah, but I don't really.
And a giant.
I don't really
machine.
lament, and it's like it doesn't really surprise me that powerful interests, that are elites or the people who run this country, have sway over such a powerful platform. It's kind of obvious that they'd have some control over it, just like it's part of the media system, and despite what people kind of think about journalism, and this kind of this kind of golden age of journalism, concept of what newspapers are and what journalism is. It's like, not for ever since newspapers were invented, or the technology was invented, they were owned by people who had money, by capital, and by local business people, by local oligarchs. If you look at like the local history of any city in America, like I'm here in San Francisco, and you look at the history of journalism here, it's like the newspapers are owned by the oligarchs, by Hearst, who owned the mines, and it's like they're tightly connected to the oligarchy. And so it's not surprising that in today, when we live in an oligarchic society, that a platform like Twitter, that's owned by oligarchs and controlled by them, it would also be captured by them on some level. So it's like, this. That's why I feel like this, the scandal that's this Twitter scandal. It's like, it's just really not that surprising. I don't know, what do people expect? I don't know. It's like, next thing you're going to tell me that there's oil lobbyists in the EPA. It's a shocker. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's at least the good thing is that we moved beyond the point where people thought it was a conspiracy theory, right? To say that
yes,
social media or the internet is tied in with,
I mean, it's like you got the richest man in America bought the fucking bought the Twitter.
And I love the fact that he's supposed to be like, but he's against the deep state. This guy who like runs Starlink, which is what, like when we interviewed Seth Harp, who was a journalist, for Harper's, who was out covering the war. I mean, he was talking about how Belitsky, the neo-Nazi guy who helped found Azov Battalion, was like right in front of him, getting on his Starlink phone so he could contact directly people in Mariupol, and then also other people to recruit new Azov regiment people. Like, this is the Nazis with the liberals, right? And they're all communicating thanks to Elon Musk. I mean, anyway, it's fucking sad that we're choosing oligarchs here, I guess.
Not just Starlink. I mean, he runs SpaceX, right? Which is basically delivering these highly classified payloads, basically surveillance satellites, right? Spy satellites. For the National Reconnaissance Office. It's like, I think the contract's worth like $300 million. I mean, these are like the most highly, this is like the most highly secretive things you can possibly imagine in terms of technology. He is the guy who's delivering them into space. So he's like the idea that he's anti-elite, the idea that he's like against the deep state. I mean, state. He runs like a small Lockheed Martin kind of outfit, like a startup, a Lockheed Martin startup, that would in some older world would probably be bought up by like Raytheon or whatever, so the idea that this guy is some outsider is a joke. And so now the guy who is tightly integrated with the military industrial complex, with the military and with American intelligence agencies, he owns Twitter, So who has a direct line to who now? It's like, it's like that's, there's a level of integration there actually that I don't think even exists. It didn't exist before he bought the company, right? I mean, there was some distance at least between these two things, and now it's like the guy who, So
like
this whole thing is a joke. That's what I mean. Is like just Twitter. It just sucks you into this. It's almost like what Twitter reminds me of sometimes, and I think this is actually Yevgenia's idea. It's like a Perky Pat layout.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We're all in there, just stuck together, actually, in the bodies of these dolls, and we have to kind of enjoy ourselves. We have to enjoy ourselves, but we're all miserable and bickering.
That's a miserable enough note to.
That's miserable enough for any show.
Yeah, we went on wild. Well, thanks, Yasha Levin, for joining us. Go to check out Yasha's yasha.substack.com, and also the podcast The Russians, and buy his book, Surveillance Valley.
Thanks.
Anyway, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It was fun. Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.